I am so happy today to be talking to the amazing singer-songwriter, Pamela Tully.
Yay, thank you so much for having me.
Hooray, thank you so much for being here. Really so excited to talk to you. So first of all, I always like to ask people kind of like a silly question up at the top. If you were to describe yourself as a combination of any three artists, they can be singers. Honestly, it doesn't even have to be artists. Like, who would they be?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I would probably say a mix between, when I think about artists, it would be Pink, number one, who is my number one absolutely amazing favorite artist. Lady Gaga, and maybe a little bit of, I don't know, like something a bit more rocky. So a lot of my sound is like rock pop. So I would say maybe Kelly Clarkson, somebody like that. They're the kind of singer songwriters that I look up to.
Got it. Is there a reason you think you gravitate towards these three? I know you kind of said it's like, oh, they're my favorites and stuff, but also especially like Pink and Gaga, like they have
Yeah,
these like massive like personas.
exactly. I think for me, it's probably about, for in particular with Pink, I love her attitude to life. This kind of go get 'em, doesn't care what anybody thinks. Very much independent woman. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to do what I need to do, and I feel that from the other two artists as well. And I have a daughter. She's 4, and I hope to kind of bring her up in that way. Always chase your dreams and never think that you can't do anything. You can always try.
That's amazing. So did you feel like when you were growing up, was music something that was very much involved? Like what role did music play in your life going forward?
It's a huge, massive role in my life. I'd say the majority of my family have been involved in music from the time that I was really, really young. And they were doing like bands here in Ireland. There's a vibrant music scene. And a lot of my family would have been busking, they would have been doing bands, they would have been kind of traveling up and down the country, singing at weddings, doing show bands and stuff like that. So music is always kind of filtered through. And for me, I got involved in that with my family, and I did a lot of the music scene that was like cover bands and stuff like that. And I did that for a very, very long time. And then the pandemic hit, and all of that went away for a lot of artists around the world, not just in Ireland. So that's when I started to look at my own music and how can I bring my own music to life.
That's amazing. So I think so many artists have talked about how like just in the modern world, like if you're doing art now, the pandemic, or if we're doing art like before and after, the pandemic is such a huge impact that other
Yeah.
people haven't really experienced. So for yourself, how do you think the pandemic changed your sound or the music that you had?
I think for me, I was always threatening to do it. I was always saying, like, next year, the year after, I'm going to get into studio, I'm going to do my own music. I was always talking about it. And then the whole entire world was in this really crazy time whereby you couldn't get out and gig. You couldn't go to a pub. You couldn't go to a wedding. You couldn't do the things that you've done before. And I think it caused a lot of people to stop and reflect and say, well, what do I actually want to do with this? And for me personally, I had a really significant health scare and in the middle of the pandemic, and that forced me out of my comfort zone. And I had a lot of stuff written that, if I'm really honest, I kind of said, I'm not even sure if these are really songs. Are these any good? If I go to a producer right now, are they going to think that they are, good enough to turn into songs? And honestly, I didn't think they were until I met the producer that I'm working with now. Initially, the first single that I brought out 2 years ago was me kind of testing the water, me testing to see, is this going to work? Do people even like this sound? I knew what I liked to sing, but I wasn't even sure what the sound was going to be like. So when we got into studio, there was a lot of conversations around, what do we want this to sound like? So the first song is really an experimentation. The second song was very much like, okay, have an idea now of where I want to go with this. I definitely want to keep my melodies and the stuff that I've written is probably quite poppy. However, I wanted to keep that rock element to it. with like strong bass drums, strong guitars included in the pop melodies.
That's, I understand what you mean. That, yeah, that's such a powerful thing that I feel like a lot of people I end up talking to find that it was, you're so right, this moment of just like pause and reflection where you're like, okay, like
Yeah.
now I get to kind of actually work on the thing I want to, not to say that it was like, it's funny the people I talked about are like, I'm not saying it was a good thing, but I'm saying a good thing that came out of it was.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And that was it for me. Like the biggest thing for me about the music right now is I'm testing, I'm figuring out my sound. I think I have a good idea now of what I want to do with it. And it was a really like a step outside of my comfort zone, because I think for about 20 years, I have sang other people's songs. Amazing, unbelievable artists singing all of their songs. I was never singing my own stuff. And that was the biggest shift for me.
Yeah. So what is that like? Was there a certain, because singing is something that's really like so vulnerable and so creative. So what did that shift feel like going from singing other people's songs to singing your own? Like, did you feel a difference in the way you sang and like how
Oh,
frightening it was?
yeah. I think like it's really brave to put yourself out there and put music that you're putting yourself out there to an audience that you just don't know how it's going to go. You don't know how people are going to take it, and you really are like bearing your soul. And the second single that I wrote, I remember writing some of the lyrics when I was actually in hospital at the time, and it's a really personal song. So when I put it out there, I was like, I don't know how people are going to take this. But it was I tried to turn a really bad crap situation into something good. And the song is an uplifting song, even though it's been written about something that was so, so scary.
Definitely. And so if you're comfortable talking about
Yeah,
it, you were diagnosed with a brain tumor during the
yeah,
pandemic.
I was. Yeah.
How, with the combination of the pandemic happening and this happening, how did you find, one, how was that just as a human person? And then also like how much of that do you think, you're saying like your second single was like very personal and about that in so many ways, like how much of that were you able to use in the music? How much did the music help?
Yeah. So I'll give you a bit of a background. So during the pandemic, like the pandemic in Ireland anyway, March 2020 is when the whole country basically shut down, and everybody was told you need to work from home, we need to quarantine, we need to have social distancing and so on. So I found out in June 2020 about the brain tumor. I was having headaches, and I ended up going to my own doctor, and thankfully she sent me to get an MRI, and it showed up on the MRI. And such a shock. I was absolutely perfect. The way you see me right now is the way I was in June 2020. Had I not gone to the doctor, it would have never been diagnosed. And I probably would have eventually had a seizure or something. So you're faced with this really shocking diagnosis. You're like, what does this mean now? We're in the middle of a pandemic. My daughter was like 1 year old at the time. So I was, whisked into hospital, and you have to have scans and you have to figure out what's going on. And eventually that culminated in me having to have surgery in November 2020. So the tumor itself had grown, and I had to have it out. Sorry, excuse me for one moment. Sorry, needed a cough. So yeah, I had the surgery, and thankfully it was a really successful surgery. They removed the whole tumor, but I didn't know at the time whether it was cancerous or not. You don't know until they actually take it out and it goes to pathology. And it turned out that I had a meningioma grade 2 brain tumor, which basically means it's non-cancerous, but it has a higher percentage recurrence rate. So whilst I had a really successful surgery, it was completely removed. It means in the future, I may get another one again. We just don't know. So that's what happens. So look, thankfully, I had a really good result. The music was an escape, absolute escape for me. The recovery was extremely long. The recovery probably took over 2 years. Recovery from brain surgery alone can take up to 2 years for your brain to like basically get back to normal. But one of the things that was said to me at the time, the location of the tumor, it was in a location that could have had a severe effect on my speech, and I may have had to have speech therapy, etc. But thankfully, I didn't. But being faced with that and being told that you may need to have speech therapy, we don't know what the future looks like, it was extremely scary. And especially for somebody like me that was a singer, it's like, what does this mean? So thankfully, I didn't have to have any of that. And that was another reason why I was so determined to get the music out there and actually do it. Because if I hadn't have done it, I think I would regret it for the rest of my life.
Totally. Wow. That's honestly, that is such a powerful story too, about like the music and like the escape, and thank goodness you're okay. Hooray.
Thankfully. Yeah, exactly. Look, it's a good, like, the way I look at it now is it is a good news story. As in, was horrible diagnosis. It was a horrible recovery, but I got through it, and the music saved me in a way, because it was something that I could concentrate on. It was something that I could put my head into, to kind of stop thinking about trying to get over the surgery and get back to work and get back to normal life, whatever that normal life was going to be. But I was, approaching surgery or approaching the producer that I'm with now, like when I was about 5-6 months into my recovery, and it was really an escape to get my head into something else and to think about something else.
Wow. Yeah. And so do you think that the experience like changed your outlook on life as a person? Like how
100%, everything changed. All the small things that I was worrying about, they all just fall away. And the one thing I will say is it's taught me to appreciate. I know a lot of people say this, and it's a bit of a cliche, but it is 100% true, that it allows you to appreciate things and do the things that you really love doing. And music is one of them for me. And it's something that I'm just going to continue doing, regardless of how successful or unsuccessful it is. It's a way for me to, channel my energy and do something that I absolutely adore doing.
Totally, because I think no, I understand, but like I don't even think it's cliche, because I think there's nothing more terrifying than just being like, okay, I'm going to do what I love doing.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that is. So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you think it's fair to say that it kind of puts it in perspective of like, okay, well, this is scarier than doing what I love to do?
Absolutely. I kind of was saying to myself at the time, if I can get through that surgery and the recovery, then I can do anything.
Absolutely. And I believe it. And so now you are, you talked about your 2 singles. You have a third one out, and you're currently working on your 4th single. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, of course. So I've done 3 singles have come out. I've done a bit of, like, the Irish music scene is very much, any day of the week that you could go to, like, a pub, you could go to a comedy festival, it's so vibrant. So any day of the week you could go into Dublin city centre and you could experience the arts, which is amazing. So I've done some, open mic nights and stuff like that. And I'm back in studio doing my 4th single, which is a little bit different to what I've done up until now. Still rocky, but a bit more of a dancey rock tune. And that was always my intention, was to put the first 3 singles out there, see how they do, and then start to kind of build it a bit more, build more of my presence, and change the sound slightly. So the sound is a bit more dancey. So when it comes out, I can't wait for it to come out. But it's being produced at the moment, and I should have it out, I'd say, before the end of the summer. It will be going live and all streaming platforms. And my plan is to be out gigging on the gigging scene, trying to get support acts and just getting the name out there. But the song itself probably has more of a bit of a Lady Gaga vibe to it.
Great. That's amazing. So do you have any things, if you were to describe the song like in a word, what would the word be?
Well, the song is called Paranoid. And when you hear it, you will think, this is what happens in somebody's head when they become paranoid.
I love that. Oh, I love songs like that. When you're listening to it and you're like, oh, they nailed this feeling. This is the feeling I'm feeling. That's the one.
That's the plan. That's the plan anyway.
Amazing. So when you talk about, can you just talk a little bit more about the Dublin and Irish music scene?
Yeah.
Because you're saying it's like very vibrant. It's everywhere. Like, yeah.
So, like, it's very, there are so many talented singer-songwriters in Ireland. Like you probably know half the ones I'm going to talk about, but obviously you too, The Script. And there's so many different, like, really amazing singer-songwriters. Dermot Kennedy is like all over America now at the moment. And it's made it so that a lot of younger singer-songwriters are wanting to like follow in the footsteps of these people. And like there's no stopping you. The one thing I will say is that like it's amazing in one end, but it can also be quite hard for a singer-songwriter to get themselves out there, because it's so much easier right now to get music out there. Long gone are the days where you had to go through a recording studio or recording company. You can do it all on your own, which is fantastic in one way, but can also be quite hard because you're competing with everybody. Yes. So that's the one thing I will say that I'm finding as I do this more and more. Half the time you can kind of become a digital music marketer rather than just doing the music, because you're trying to get your music out there and you're trying to get it to the right audience. And with social media now, it can really work for some people, and then it can equally be quite hard to get your sound out there and get the right kind of audience that you want.
Totally. And I think that's such a good point. And I think I've talked to other artists about it as well, where it really is, you're competing with the world, but there's no reason you can't just do it yourself. Have you
exactly found,
yeah. And I think that in order to compete with people, because it's the same thing, that you're going to hear the person who's shouting the loudest, but if you're dedicating so much time to shouting the loudest, it's like, oh, how good is the quality?
Yeah, you got to try and balance it, and it is hard.
So how much of a balance do you think you strike with yourself, and do you think that it's been more of a help or a hindrance to what you do, or even just like a combination of?
It's probably a bit of a combination. So like when I started this, like I work full time. I am a mammy, I'm a wife. I'm in the middle of doing my master's right now. It's nearly over. So like life goes on, and the music end of it, like I would love to switch that around and for the music to be the first thing that I do, along with my family and everything. But I kind of think, you have to try and balance it. I'm working with some really great people, like producers and musicians, who are doing the exact same as me, that are trying and testing things and putting things out there. So I think I'd say in the last probably 2 months or so, I'm learning as I go. So I'm trying to learn as much as I can about the business end of it, as well as honing the sound. And the more you do, the more you learn. And that's the way I'm approaching it right now. I'm just saying, you know what? I'm going to get myself out there. I'm going to speak to as many people as I can, get as much advice as I can, but at the exact same time, continue writing, continue in the studio, trying to get more songs, get as much as we can out there. So yeah, look, it's a bit of half and half, I suppose.
Got it. No, that makes sense. What are you getting your master's in?
So I work in HR, and my master's is HR management.
Got it.
So I'm actually doing it on remote work.
Oh, wait, that's very convenient.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I just sorry, I'm going to say, I can hear my daughter outside. She's waiting on me. She's standing outside there calling me, Mommy.
We love a good in-house situation.
Yeah, exactly. I can hear her. She's like, what are you doing? Anyway. But yeah, like, I mean, for me, I'm just going to continue doing it. I'm going to finish off the masters, like, continue working, continue honing the sound. And just my plan over the next year is to get as many singles out as I can, working towards EP, and then like get gigging as much as I can and get out there and start gigging again, because that's one thing that the pandemic took away from a lot of artists, is that they weren't out gigging the way that they would have been. And I want to get back to that.
Totally. Because also that scene is just so exciting and fun. And it's like, oh, there's so much going on all around.
Exactly.
So in terms, going back a little bit to your fourth single, I know you're saying it's like, it's paranoia. It's like paranoid, the feeling that's like going on inside your head when you feel that way. Do you consider yourself like a particularly paranoid person? Like, where does that inspiration for that come from?
I think I'm probably an overthinker. I overthink situations 100%. And then when everything happened with the brain tumor, that kind of went into overdrive. So the song is a lot about, you know, you can think, a thought can come into your head and you can run with it, even though it's only a thought. And it can be a really negative thought and it may not be real. But this can happen to a lot of people where they make it become real in their own heads. And I have definitely experienced that, especially going through a health diagnosis. So that's kind of where the inspiration for the song has come from.
Got it. And that definitely makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think we've talked a bit about your first and second singles. And now there's the fourth single that's coming out at the end of the summer. Can you talk a little bit about your third single?
Sure. So the third single is called Fractured, and it's all about trying to love again. So it's for anybody out there that has ever had their heart broken and they build up their walls and the trust is broken. And then they start to meet somebody new and they start to think, oh, maybe this is what I thought it was, what I wanted it all along. And sorry, I might have to move. So bear with me. Yeah, let me just move a little bit. Sorry, give me 1 second. Sorry, guys, can I squeeze out there? Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Now, let me just move out here for a second. So yeah, it's all about loving again, basically, and you know, trusting that person and letting your heart open again.
God.
I'm so sorry about this. Out and about, so you probably I hope you can hear me okay.
Yes, I can hear you perfectly. The service is great, actually. But yes, that's so it kind of do you find that your songs gravitate towards specific like feelings, emotions? Like, are there specific stories you're trying to tell, or like how do the songs come to you?
You know what, I think they definitely, there's no kind of one size that I go after, if that makes sense. If I think about the three singles that I have out now, the first one was written a very, very long time ago. Like I wrote it probably 6 or 7 years ago. So that was definitely just testing the water. And then I think the way I approach them, it's about the feelings that I have about certain situations. So the second single is really about, you know, the diagnosis and coming back from something so significant. The third one, Fractures, is actually definitely written about my own personal love life and me finding somebody, i.e. my now husband, who tells me all the time that when he first met me, for about a year, I had my walls built and I back out, and I definitely had my walls built up. And then the fourth single again kind of goes back to the overthinking and what happened with the diagnosis. So it's pretty much, you know, my own experiences and me trying to channel them into what I feel other people might relate to as well.
Got it. Also, I think I'm losing you a little bit with the service, just so you.
I'm so sorry.
Oh my gosh, no problem. We actually heard everything. I'm just worried about it like fully cutting out after.
Okay. Sorry about this. Yeah, the Wi-Fi might be a little bit bad where I'm standing.
Oh no, don't worry. I totally understand. So far, we've been able to hear everything though, so that's been great. But so you talk a lot about how did you first start getting into music?
I think I'd probably definitely with my family, and with my family doing so much with music, it was kind of a natural progression for me to go into that. And I think then for me doing it personally, I kept it off. And I kept thinking, you know, it's not going to, that didn't happen. So definitely it was a family affair in the beginning.
Got it. So how do you feel that, because I know with a lot of people that grow up with music or with people who are musical in the family, there's weirdly the kind of a resistance at first to like kind of go into the family business. Did you experience that?
Yes, I definitely did. I was a bit reluctant to do it because I kind of thought, oh, this is like, you know, this is what the family is doing. I don't know. But then I got a little bit older and yeah, I just got into it a bit more and I got really excited about it. So it was a really good thing because I kind of feel like I cut my teeth or I learned my craft within the family.
Totally. So when you were in the process of resisting it, what did you think you were, what was your like, no, I'm not going to do music like all of you. I'm going to do this.
I think I just was really like, a lot of my other family members had done it, and I was like, oh no, like if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it on my own. I don't.
Yeah.
But realistically, I did because I needed to have a good ear for music. But when I went into the family part of it, I was able to kind of learn like the stage presence, the putting a band around you, the entire band, and working with different musicians. So I definitely learned a lot from doing it, but I resisted it in the beginning because I was young and I thought that I could do it all on my own.
As everyone tends to do. So how do you think that your music,
yes, absolutely.
how do you think your music now is similar to and different from like the music you grew up with or like around?
I would say I am trying to hold on to the rock part of what I've done with my family for years and years and years, but I'm trying to make it my own. So it's my sound, it's me, it's all my lyrics. It's rather than me singing like Led Zeppelin, Tina Turner, all the greats, and performing for an audience that is, say, like a wedding or a festival or something like that. This is me singing about my personal feelings. And I just feel like it's just a natural progression into me becoming an artist.
Totally. And so you also, I know, as you're saying, like singing other people's songs and doing all this other stuff, you you have performed at like a lot of weddings, you've performed in a lot of cover band stuff. What were bands that you gravitated towards to sing their music?
Definitely Led Zeppelin. We used to do a lot, and that's really good to gig. Tina Turner. We did a lot of Lady Gaga. We did a lot of like Beyonce. Kind of, there was two female singers in the band that I was in at the time, so we played around with a lot of that kind of independent music. But we also did like 70s, 80s music as well. So it was a big kind of list of different types of music. The way I would describe it is things that would get people up dancing.
Got it. And so how much of an influence, I know I have so many questions about influence, but I think that your path into the songs you've created now is so fascinating. And like, clearly you're creating you have your own voice, you're telling your own story, but were there any specific songs or artists that I know you've mentioned like Tina Turner a few times that that you were like covering their stuff kind of clicked in where it's like, oh, this, then like maybe if I twist it, you know what, like where were there specific artists or songs where like that's where the inspiration have influenced what you have out now?
I would say one song in particular, Whole Lot of Love by Led Zeppelin.
Nice.
Love that song. See the guitar in that song. Oh my God, unbelievable. And Kelly Clarkson, we used to do like Behind Those Hazel Eyes. We used to do a lot of Pink, like her earlier stuff. So So What, kind of that really like, rocky girl power, let's go kind of songs. And I try to replicate bits of that in some of the music that I'm doing now.
Beautiful. If you have any advice for people who are also trying to come up in the music scene as singer-songwriters, what advice would you give to them?
I would say don't be afraid. I would say go for it. Just test and try everything. Try it all, because at the end of the day, that's what people are doing. People are out there, they're trying different sounds, they are putting things out there. So don't try and prove yourself to other people. Do it for yourself. Whatever sound you like, whatever you love to listen to, don't put songs out there because you think people are going to listen to them, because you're thinking about what they want to hear. Try and put it out there because you think it's going to relate to people. And if you love it, then that will relate to people.
Amazing. Well, we are starting to run low on time, but before you go, I have one question that I love asking everyone, which is, sure, what's something you wish people would ask you about more that you don't feel like you get to talk about enough?
I don't know. Actually, that's a really good question. I think they're probably there. I can't think of anything off the top of my head because, to be honest, I'm putting myself out there at the moment with like talking about the diagnosis. So there's nothing to hide, if you get me. And I am speaking about it because I want people to be aware of where I've come from and to raise awareness about brain tumors as well, because of all the types of diagnoses, it was a really difficult time. So I kind of get to talk about that anyway, and which I find is a really good kind of healing therapeutic side for me. And it helps me raise awareness for other people because I think at the time I had a lot of help and I had a lot of people that reached out to me that had had similar diagnoses, and that really helped me. So if I can do that for somebody else, I'm really happy to do that. So the fact that I get to talk about that is fantastic. So there's nothing else really. I think I'm being really open and talking about everything that's going on. So yeah,
So we got it all. Perfect.
I think we
All
did.
right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for talking to me today. Is there anything else that you want to advertise or plug or social media?
Just anybody wants to follow me on all streaming platforms and on all my socials, it's Tully Pamela on Instagram and TikTok, and it's Pamela Tully Music on Facebook. So please just follow and I'll continue to share my journey.
Amazing. And then be sure to check out that fourth single at the end of the summer.
Yes, thank you so much.